Hi, my name's Matt Gosbell. I'm part owner here of the Melbourne Bird Veterinary Hospital. We're one of only 2 bird-only clinics in Australia. I've got what we call a membership in avian medicine, and I'm also presently doing a residency to become a registered bird specialist here in Australia. So these birds are Eclectus birds. These are Eclectus parrots. These are really fascinating birds. They're very common and popular pets here in Australia. Initially, we didn't think these two were the same species, but what we've discovered is the green birds are the male birds and the red are the female birds. They're not big flock birds, so they actually cope quite well in a home that doesn't have lots of other birds, but they also do cope well with lots of other birds as well. Sometimes we have a lot of trouble when people have a male and a female bird. In the wild, the females tend to be quite tarty and they like to choose their males. They allow the males to come in and court them, and if they don't like them, they'll chase them away. Female birds can corner the males and attack them. If they don't like them, they can actually kill the male birds or at least cause serious damage. So if you have a male eckie and you're thinking of getting a female for him, you've got to be very careful about which female you get and perhaps give them a chance to see each other and decide if they actually like each other. Otherwise you could end up with a lot of issues and problems in that flock situation. I think it's really important when you first buy a bird and you want something like an eckie, that you put in a bit of effort trying to understand their natural behaviours and what they're like in the wild and what their personalities and things are, because that can help you. You're right, mate. Because that can help you understand their normal behaviours and how to treat them in the home and in the flock situation. As a vet, I really enjoy working with these kind of guys. I find these guys tend to be very gentle. They tend to cope very well with manipulation and with poking and prodding. I also find this is a species that is very forgiving. So for me, if I've taken some bloods or done some testing, I will find that they will often tell me off at the time, but next time I see them, they've forgiven me. Even by the end of the consult, when I put them back in the cage, they'll tell me that they've had enough, but they'll also give me an indication that they've forgiven me for the work that I've done, which is not always the common scenario. We get a lot of birds that I just have to be really careful with, because each time they come in the clinic, they can get a little bit more stressed. A lot of people feed these incorrectly. While we probably still don't know their full dietary requirements, many people try to give them far too much fruit. They really are a vegetarian species, and sure, they live in the tropical environment, and they do eat a lot of fruit, and they do certainly love fruits such as passion fruits and things, but I think people feed them far too much of that. And I'll get birds that have been fed largely a fruit diet, and their feathering will be dark, it'll be greasy and oily, and the birds will be quite sickly. A common thing that people suggest is that these guys require a higher amount of vitamin A than other species of birds. This may well be correct. If you're feeding, though, a good diet with vegetables, and especially if you're using a lot of carrot in the vegetables, if you're using diets that have reasonable vitamin A quantities, you shouldn't run into vitamin A deficiency problems. Although these guys do more commonly have vitamin A deficiency problems, that doesn't mean that they'll have a lot of mineral and vitamin deficiency issues in other areas as well. I think the important thing is just to give them a good range of vegetables as a supplement for their diet, particularly with a lot of good quality of legumes as well as your greens to supply your vitamins and minerals. So this particular species is a little bit different from the Australian cockatoo type species, which they are not a bird that has a lot of powder down. In fact, they don't really have any powder down at all. Handling these guys is a little bit different. With powder down birds, you run your fingers through and you'll get a lot of powder through your fingers. Not the case here. They usually have this slick sort of feather, and they use a lot of, they use their preening glands to help keep themselves clean. It's really important, I think, not only with these guys, but even with powder down birds, just to be careful not to over handle them and over pet them. Birds usually have quite dry feathers, And if we handle them a lot, we're often putting the grease on our fingers onto their feathering. And that can be quite irritant to their feathering and can actually damage the feathers. These guys, they can, you can see when they've been overhandled, because they can often get sort of a black discoloration of the feathers. And that's quite common with the oil that we have in our fingers. If we're touching them too much, that can start causing damage to their feathers. It's not the only reason we'll get some blackening of the feathers. That can also occur from poor nutrition, poor diet as well, and poor husbandry conditions. But we tend to over pat them. We tend to want to cuddle them and touch them all the time. That's not what they're used to, and they can read that mistakenly as well. So they can get behavioural issues and sexual issues and believe that you're sexually advancing upon them. And one of the big mistakes that I think people make is they misunderstand that birds go through life stages. It's basically the same as in humans. We have the juvenile stage, which then goes into the adolescent stage and the adult stage. If we spend all our time patting and cuddling from the juvenile stage, which is the stage most people get their pet birds, if we don't recognise that they're growing and going through those life stages, and you continue to try and treat them and manage them like they're juveniles, when the hormones start to kick in and they become adolescents, then you can start seeing a whole lot of behavioural problems. So just like with our kids, when you have a young child that needs the nurturing and the cuddling and may even jump in your bed at night because they've had a nightmare, and you'll let them sleep with you in the bed in those situations, you wouldn't do that with an adolescent child. So we need to change the way we manage our birds as they develop and grow through these life stages. Otherwise, we risk having significant behavioural problems.
How do you like your shirt? P.S. Don't be an idiot.
Is that going in the bloopers?